I am Geoff Brady, and I'm the Global Head of Trade and Supply Chain here at Bank of America, and I'm based in New York.
Great. Geoff, what keeps the corporate treasurer up at night?
Well, it's interesting, we think about it from a trade finance perspective. The question we get a lot is around what's going on in the global community in trade. Trade is a very prominent topic these days, and I think there are two things. One, treasurers sort of look at where they source from and who their buyers are and how do they manage their supply chains accordingly. And I think there's a physical part of that and there's a financial part of that. So, you can't sort of change your supply chain overnight and say, well, today I source from one corner of the world and tomorrow I'm going to make a decision to source from a different part of the world. Sometimes there's a lot of capital components around that, so that's sort of a process. It's easier to do that sometimes if you're sourcing commodities or things like that, but most often that's sort of a long-term or a medium-term question. In terms of the financial part of it, it means that you need to work with partners that are prepared to be able to supply chain manage what you're sourcing around the world. And I think from a financial standpoint, it means things like supply chain finance, things like trade finance. And I think how to manage that properly and how to do it in a way such that you can maximize your working capital. Those are the things that the treasurers are thinking about.
Great, thank you. So I guess let's go into a bit more detail on the financing of that and the technology behind it. And we noticed that Bank of America recently joined Marco Polo.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out a bit more about this. Is this all hype or is there some methodology behind it?
I think the great news is that we have seen more collaboration in trade finance in the industry with banks and technology, fintechs, insurers, whoever it might be, in the last 3 years than we saw in probably the prior 15 years. And I think what that means is that discussion is happening in a meaningful way. We're figuring out things like standards, things like international law and jurisdiction, and how can we apply that to trade finance. And I think that will come with the technology. The technology, I think, is there. It's just a matter now of being able to fit that into the global standards of how we do what we do as an industry. And I think Marco Polo is a great way for us to be a part of that discussion. And I think it was important for us to put our resources down, both from a human capital and a financial capital perspective, in order to be able to be a part of that discussion and shape it. And also we have that direct dialogue with our clients. And I think that brings the client's voice to the discussion as well. So, sometimes it's not so important to have transactions happening immediately, but the discussion is more important so that we can get to the right place eventually. And I think that's the idea behind our joining Marco Polo, and that's what we hope to get out of the experience.
Great. And what have we got to look forward to from Bank of America for the rest of the year?
Well, I think trade has been an interesting topic. It's been a relevant topic, and I think it's on treasurers' minds. It's certainly on our minds at Bank of America. And I think as the world continues to change, we continue to change with it and make sure that we're there for our clients in any capacity that we need to be. And one of the first things is, as we are a bank, ultimately, our clients look to us for financing. So we need to be prepared to be there in whatever shape that takes, and also to be able to advise them on how we think the best use of that capital or that financing will take shape, particularly when it comes to supply chains. So I think you'll hear much more about trade in the coming months and the coming year. And regardless of what goes on in the geopolitical arena, we're always going to be there to facilitate trade finance globally, and I think that conversation will be very prominent in 2020 and beyond.
Great, Geoff, it's been fantastic having you on the show.
Deepesh, always a pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of SIBOS.
Thank you.